Hello, it's a commentary for my favorite episode. I like that. Oh, so yeah, I guess I'll start this one by saying this is probably my favorite episode I've made, um, for a lot of reasons. If you haven't watched this show ever, then don't watch this yet. Like, what? Go watch the whole thing first, and then because this has spoilers in it. Um, I know last episode everybody was like so angry that I ended it right where I did, but I was like, no, it's perfect. This is perfect, and this is one of the perfect introductions to the plot twist that's coming. Last time, young Link killed a guy, and it really, it was really manipulative of this guy's part. Who is this guy? I wonder. I know. I know some people were kind of lost at this point, but it's like, well, if you've been watching the show, I think I left enough clues as to what was going on, so it was really up to the audience to put it together. I wanted to try to do as much as I could without, saying it out loud, but in this case, this was the episode, and this was the part where I knew I had to have the characters explain a few things. We had to just stop and have John explain what's going on. And I even have young Link here kind of put together a few things. Not a whole lot, but just enough to be like, oh wait, that makes sense. You're not John. It's just a thing where, yeah, the audience is, if you've been following the show, the audience has already kind of figured this out, and some of them haven't, but, the real followers have like, we already know what's going on here. It's this guy! Who is this guy? Well, this guy's name is Mudora, from the Book of Mudora. And I really enjoyed this character. I don't know if you can tell. Eclipso, I've always said, is probably my favorite character. Medora is probably my second favorite character, because he deals with the lore, basically, of Zelda. He does the behind the scenes kind of lore stuff. And this is just his time to be involved now, and he's always been a character in the background. He's been a mysterious, we don't know anything at all about this guy kind of character. And I really like the thought processes of this character, and I also like the because I want the audience to think about things themselves and not spell everything out. So I want people to think why Medora really did all these things. Like, did he want to get back to Impa, or my favorite is that Daphnis beat him. And Daphnis is the only one that ever beat him. And so, what was more important to him? Was it saving Impa, or was it getting his revenge? Was it just, saying, you're not, I'm not going to let you, get away with everything? Because Daphnis is still alive after all this time, so It's like, are we really just going to let him exist? And I also like the fact that, Medora, there's a bit of hypocrisy in how he's doing this, because Daphnis manipulated people, and now Medora manipulated young Link. He manipulated a lot of people, really. He manipulated more people than Daphnis did, in a way. So, I was really looking forward to this fight. I think it may have come out better in my head. But, as Medora said earlier, young Link is technically stronger than him. But, this is Medora. This is a guy that's smart. He doesn't fight, with just pure brawn. He's smart. He's been preparing for this. So he knew this was going to happen. And just like in the, I believe it was the previous episode where he talks to Dark Link about the special electricity he made. And you'll see that later. Yeah, I know this fight doesn't accomplish a whole lot, but I think it's, it's one of my favorite fights of the series, really. Because, I was kind of sitting there, after everything Medora's done, there's no way that they can't fight. There has to be something. I had thought about Medora just using electricity on him immediately and being like, nope, you can't touch me. I was like, no, that's too simple. We need a little more of a spectacle than that. But yeah, Medora's putting up more of a fight than Vadi was, so, it's like he's pretty good. He is not a slouch. I also, I toyed with the idea of giving him the gold power. But I was like, well, I don't know. Probably don't need to abuse that too much. Yeah, he probably has it. He's just like, nah, I'm just not going to use it. Like, no, there's no need for that. This is the goddess shield that I came up with. It's the other phrase for it is perfect protection. Basically, it can block anything. It's like, it makes sense that Medora would have that. Zap. There's a little bit of a hint of the electricity he's using. When we get there, I'll explain exactly what's going on with the electricity. Yeah, so that was their warm-up, and now we're getting to the real gritty. Yeah, I had fun trying to export this video. It was kind of difficult. I don't know, I never got the hang of getting every frame out correctly, especially when there's so much stuff going on the screen. Yeah, I had a lot of fun tearing up the ground for this part, because I was like, this needs to... There needs to be a lot more scale in this than just the plain field, so... I was like, their powers are so great, let's blow up the whole... Let's blow up the land, pretty much. Yeah, when I do these fights, I don't really have everything planned out beforehand. Some of it I make up as I go, and then there's times where I'm in the car trying to think up of something, like an idea of like, oh, what if Young Link did this, or what if Medora does that? Which is, a lot of this was, he throws a thing at him and then punches him through it and throws him, and then they, grab each other, grapple, and then, hit the ground, and they hit bedrock, and it's like, it's ridiculous. Oh, man. It would have been cool if the river kind of flooded in the place. Yeah, I had trouble with the editing. That's why some things seem a little abrupt if you pay real close attention to it. Had enough? They're not even out of breath. You didn't read much, did you? Even though the Book of Medora has no details on the Dark Sorcerers. It probably had stuff on Warlock, maybe. If those books survived, who knows? Yeah, I do like the fact that, you know, they stop for a minute and he goes over a couple more lore things during a fight. But it does, you know, there is a point to it. And we'll see it in a second. But, you know, the two spells he's talking about are the spells from Adventure of the Link. The ancient spells. I mean, I like the fact that he's like, Warlock created magic. Like, he literally made discovered magic. I don't know, I just think that's neat. And, you know, Medora likes to talk about that stuff, because it's cool. Yeah, so he's looking at his hand. This is the electricity that he used on Dark Link in the last episode. And so young Link here is like, I can't touch him, like physically, because he keeps using that electricity. It's making him weaker. So this is why he resorts to projectile attacks. That doesn't work. So then he's like, well, okay, I'll just use the move I used on Vadi and finish him off. See, and young Link's not stupid either here. He's not just... I mean, he tried it a few times, and he's like, oh, it's not working. So yeah, he's using that power, and Medora's having a little bit of... He's struggling a little bit, because it is a powerful attack. It's like, you know... It's like, yeah... Not a scratch. And, you know, this is young Link, where he's like, oh, no. He's like, oh, okay, what do I do now? And, you know, I think it makes sense that Medora would defeat him like this. I mean, it makes sense to me. I know there were some people that were like, really? But I'm like, he's Medora. What do you want? You know, what do you expect? Yeah, I thought it was a cool effect to have his mouth kind of doing those movements like that, like those little shadowy movements. Yeah, and, you know, it's again, Medora's a different fighter, so he's using spellcasting. It's backward speak, pretty much. That's the thunder spell. I like that shot. Yeah, I was trying to think of how to finish this fight, and it's like, well, I don't know, this makes sense to me. Those spell out the word spell. By the way, in the Hyrulean language font. So yeah, he uses spell, and that, you know, in the game, spell changes the form of some of the monsters, and so in this case, it reverts him back to his normal self, and that's the fight. And like I said, you know, I think some people were kind of like, wow, that was a little bit anticlimactic. But I'm like, yeah, but I mean, the climactic stuff is coming. You know, like, this is him just trying to calm young Link down, really. Yeah, so we're getting into the part where I think the most notable changes are coming to the ending. I had Medora, you know, planned as the last villain, and this fight was always planned. you know, they had like this one fight where Young Link loses, and then in the original ending, they fight again, and Young Link wins. But you know, this was the kind of fight to show that, you know, this guy means business. So, you know, coming up is where you can tell, I think, you know, for me, I can tell, but you can probably tell where things are kind of changing how the ending goes. Yeah, I know some people were kind of wondering what the whole point of the Triforce story was going on here. The Triforce, you know, is MIA for some of the show, and it's like it's showing up in places it's not supposed to be. And Dark Link is like, you know, something is going on. I know it. I know something. I know you're up to something. Like, you know, he knows up to Calypso and Zelda first are doing something that's behind their backs. And some people don't remember. Young Zelda and adult Zelda here have not seen each other since episode 10. Like, ever since, you know, Zelda got kidnapped in episode 10. They haven't seen each other in a long time. So that's why I was like, I have to, you know, spend a few seconds on that. Yeah, this is where you know, a lot of this episode I kind of got worried about the dialogue because the characters don't know what's going on. You know, the characters, most of the main characters don't know who this is. They don't know. Yeah, and so they're now just finding out who this guy is, and I was like, there's a lot of dialogue the way I wrote it before the first time. It was just so wordy and so like there's pages and pages of, you know, catching up the characters to what the audience already knows. And so I was like, well, okay, we'll have a little bit of that. But, you know, we're going to have Impa, you know, and Medora's like, let me explain what's going on. Like, and I'm sorry for all this stuff. And Impa just all of a sudden, you know, does this. And it's like, that saves us time. It's like, there's no time for that. We got to deal with this now. But yeah, when Young Link was finding out who Medora was, Medora had like pages and pages of, you know, this is what happened, this is who I am. And I was like, this is too many words. There probably is a little bit too much dialogue in this episode anyway, so I try to cut it down because sometimes you just don't need other characters saying one or two words. It's like, we got it, you know, move on. Not that I was trying to rush through it or anything, but you know, this episode is 52 minutes long. I mean, you know, how much dialogue do we need? Yeah, I was kind of worried because I mean, right then where Impa transforms into Ganondorf the First is where it's like, okay, either the audience is really going to buy this or they're not. Like, this is the point where it's like that just happens out of nowhere, and it's like, is this a good idea? Is it not? I guess we'll find out. I don't know. I already animated all of it, so I guess, you know, we can't go back now. Yeah, and you know, thanks to you, I am finally Ganondorf. Thankfully, you know, I was like, you know, just have Ganondorf say that, and it's like, that's all you need. You know, you don't need, like, after 1,000 years of being being dormant and gaining my power, I'm finally awakened. Blah, blah, blah. You know, he's just like, yeah, thanks for doing that. You freed me, ha. And yeah, you know, I gave Regalo a little bit of backstory here, since Regalo, you know, as much as everybody likes Regalo, I'm like, don't really know a whole lot about him. Maybe that's part of his charm, I guess. But yeah, I was like, you know, Regalo needed to come from somewhere, and it's like, I don't know, I think that makes him more interesting that, you know, this guy was his father and he turned on him, you know, and like way back when Eclipso Link was first saving the world. Yeah, the rules here are from Skyward Sword, where, you know, Zelda says the gods and demons cannot use the Triforce, and he's referring to him. This is very out of character for Ganondorf, or the Ganondorfs of the past, because they always want the Triforce to gain their wishes. Yeah, and I had to have Medora say that's the real one, because in the previous episode there were fake ones. There were like 2 fakes. And so when he does that, it's like, Medora's like, that was the real one. Like, oh no. So, yeah, like I said, I was saying before, it's a bit out of character for Ganondorf to do this, but this Ganondorf, I decided, like, you know, he's been watching, you know, the past stuff before. It's like the Triforce won't work for him, so it's like, no, I'm not even gonna bother. I don't need it. I was watching this with one of my friends, and you know, he was really excited because he said, I lead him to you, and he hears that laughter. He was like, you know, Girahim, and it's like Girahim showed up. I'm sure there's a lot of people that were like, you know, Girahim! And again, you know, I mentioned this before, that this is kind of what the fans wanted from me. They would ask me all the time, is this character going to show up? Is that character going to show up? Girahim was, you know, one of them. They really wanted Girahim to show up. And I kept saying over and over, nope, like, you know, it wouldn't make any sense for him to show up. And again, this is kind of rushed, you know, I'll admit, this is kind of, you know, Ganondorf just shows up, Girahim just shows up, and then Girahim makes everybody else show up. Like, in the span of, you know, a few minutes. Like, this is really quick. And I was like, I don't know, because Daphnis, you know, in the previous episode, he kind of hinted that you have no idea what horrors will be unleashed, and this is what he was talking about. You know, like, this is the kind of thing of, like, there had to be consequences for Daphnis being released, or, I'm sorry, being killed. And that was like Ganondorf be released. So after all that talking, we're finally starting in, you know, the best part of the episode, which is this 30-minute long fight scene. And so, yeah, Girahim just makes everyone spawn, pretty much. And it's, you know, some people are asking, like, where did all these people come from? And it's like, no, Girahim did it. Remember in Skyward Sword at the very end of the game, he can just do that. He just spawns all these bokoblins. Like, I was like, make him spawn everything. So yeah, even at the very start of this, you know, I was trying to think of how to balance this out, and you know, the way the battle starts, really, you know, there's not really a one-sidedness to it. It's really just kind of balanced at first. You know, like Eclipse took a shot, it didn't work. And then, you know, what's really going on for most of this fight is the fact that you're seeing a lot of new things, like King Dodongo shows up, and then Armored Goma shows up, and then what's his name shows up, and then Sia shows up. I think that helps a lot with this fight, and I think that's why it's so. I think that's why it's pretty good, is the fact that, you know, not slowly, but at a steady pace, I just introduce a new thing as it goes. So yeah, now you're seeing that there's more than one King Dodongo. There's 3 or 4 or 5. And yeah, I didn't use them as much as I wanted to because there wasn't time. But Calypso has his ninjas, so I was like, don't forget about them. So it's like, okay, the heroes have a little bit more help, or do they? Yeah, as much as, it felt like Medora should have done more in this scene, it's like, well, young Link and him have already had a scene, so it's like, and, it's like, don't worry, they'll have things later. Like, Medora helps a lot in the last final battle, so, yeah, I had to get rid of young Link, in a way, so young Link says that, and then it's like, he starts to transform, and then Ganondorf grabs him before he can do anything. It's like, oh. That's why in the next episode, young Link shows up already transformed in front of him, so he can't do that again. Yeah, so that's kind of my secret to this fight, was that every minute or two you need to introduce a new enemy. And so, yeah, this was definitely a fight scene where I had to come up with all this stuff. And, I'd say 50% of it I probably made up on the spot. I didn't know what I was doing, but the other 50% I had to figure out. I was like, okay, I want that to happen. I want this to happen. That was a cool way to introduce Yuga. And I was like, yeah, I mean, because there were people that were watching this. Like, I had friends that were watching this live with me. That they were like, oh, Yuga! They were like, he's here, and he's, and she's here, and he's here. Yeah, there's not a whole lot of dialogue in these fights, and I do that kind of on purpose. I want the fights to kind of speak for themselves, really. Very rarely will they talk during the fight. I think the next line of dialogue, I think, is from Raph, who's like, "We can't do this." It's just an acknowledgement of like, this is a lot for us. Like, yeah, even though these characters have superpowers, they're much more powerful than the usual Zelda characters in the games. Yeah, there's a lot of people that are like really enjoy the fact that they stand next to each other. I don't think I ever changed how the order went, because I mean you could technically cut these in the order you wanted to a point. Like Zelda first didn't have to show up there and shoot a Goma right then. Yeah, it was hard. It was definitely really hard to figure out who do I cut to next and why. And there's the character nobody likes. I did not have a lot of fun making him. And I was like, I didn't even really want to include him, but it's like, I know people are gonna be like, so there's gonna be that one guy or that one person that's like, why isn't this Wizzro in here? And I'm like, do you care? Do you really care that Wizzro's there? Like, he has to be there. I don't know. I didn't have anybody really say that, but I was like, it'd be funny. It'd be just hilarious. It'd be like in the next sequel after this, will Wizzro be in there? And I'm like, no. Yeah, I had to Because this is Sia's thing, is I had to change a little bit of what the Dark Links look like. Never came out the way I wanted it to. Marina dodging. So yeah, Marina is awesome. Like, she's fighting 4 people at once by herself. I, you know, hope I made that clear that Marina is awesome. And I like Sia too. I don't think I ever really, you know, toyed with the idea of having her plot and I forgot that. That was so I really love that. I love the fact that Maria punches Sia into a Dodongo and kills the Dodongo. And like poor Marina, like after she does that, it's like, nope, you don't get the rest. There's more. I know in Hyrule Warriors, Sia has a crush on Link or whatever. It's like I don't think we have time for that, really. Yeah, I was like, I'm kind of done with voice acting people. I mean, as much as, you know, I know that sounds bad, but I don't know. I'm kind of over doing voice editions, really. I mean, I did the voice editions. I were like, that's absolutely necessary. So I was like, I'm not gonna get voice actors for Sia and Yuga and I got one for Girahim. We had to get a Girahim one. Girahim was essential to me. Let's say, whatever this guy's name is, I can't remember. This dude right here, red armor man. I don't know. They just, I don't know. What do you want them to say besides, you know, I'm going to kill you now, Link. Prepare yourself. It'd be like, you know, Saturday morning cartoon. Like, look out, it's the Zelda team. Get them, my faithful servants. Yeah, this was kind of the running theme that we get to now, is the fact that Eclipso takes down one of these things, and then, you know, 2 more show up. This game is rigged. Probably one of my favorites was the fact that I included the Landmola from the Link to the Past comic, and I did have one guy. I had one person that was like, I know what that's from, you know. Like, I know that. That's from the Link to the Past comic. And I'm like, that's awesome that you know, animated the thing and it moves. And yeah, I like this shot a lot. Probably some of my favorite shots are them fighting on top of the Landmola. Yeah, that's just fun. I wanted to do more. I wanted to do so much more. So this shot here, where they're fighting separate enemies, took like a whole day. Like, it was just, as much as I wanted more of this, I was like, I can't. It's so much work. I know it doesn't seem like it, but it was. It just took so long, and I was exhausted. I'm like, no, we gotta keep the episode moving. Yeah, I wanted a character that played the guitar. I know you probably wanted me to talk about him. I was trying to think of who I had first before this. I can't remember. It was like a character from, like a villain from Cyber Zelda that I made. I was like, I'll make a Zora that, it makes sense that the Zora plays the guitar, and I don't know, a lot of people really, it was like some people's favorite part was this character. Yep, let me include this dude. I even had the sound effect, so it's like, oh yeah, that's the, oh, if you played Adventure of Link, you know who that guy is. Yeah, in Adventure of Link, he doesn't have this power, but, you know, again, this is the souped up version of this. You know, this is Zelda with attitude. Yeah, you know, this is not your ordinary Zelda cartoon, as I think you would know. Yeah, so I was trying to put Medora in a pinch here, so it's like he can't really use the full extent of his abilities, but you know, he also is like, I have an idea. I'm going to use water. I know that seems lame, but it's like I wanted one character that tries to stop the fires, and at the same time, it's such a huge thing of water. It's like 1,000 gallons of water just splashing on them, and it's like that would knock anybody away. But Ganondorf's like, nope, I'm not gonna let you. I know Ganondorf said he wasn't gonna soil his hands by fighting weaklings, but you know he's like, oh, I'll participate a little bit. He's like, I'll have fun taking shots at people. Why not? Poor Raph. Yeah, that's kind of the thing. It's like he's probably killed like hundreds of dudes, and it's like there's like 5,000 billion left. Yeah, this scene. I had played with the idea that this was going to be Raph's last scene, and the people I had talked to about it really didn't like it. They were like, no, you can't kill Raph like this. But this does help with one thing, and that's the fact that when you're watching this for the first time, you don't know. You don't know if that's the end of Raph or not. But yeah, I wanted this moment because it was so dramatic for one thing. It was just... Because it is a showstopper right now. It's like everybody stopped, and they're like... did that just happen? Girahim, you jerk! Don't laugh at that. But yeah, the kind of the point with this was that, you know, you start to worry for the characters now. I think before you kind of were like, they got this, you know, they can keep fighting for a while, but when that happens, it's like, oh, you know, they could die here. Like somebody could die. And here goes Marina to save the day. And she just nails this thing. Ow. You don't touch my Raph. Oh, I love that. Like the moment they like land on the ground, this thing shows up. And there's two of them. I didn't want to animate the full thing. I was like, this thing is threatening. Like the heads are threatening enough by themselves. So I don't know. It makes sense. It made sense to me. Just that these things are scary. I know they don't try to eat you in the game, but I'm like, that's more terrifying. And I had the ninja show up just to get eaten, and that's for Raph to be like, ah. Like, they're like snakes. They just, you know, they're so fast that it's like they died immediately. Yeah, the music was different in this scene. I think, you know, I think I accidentally had this song playing in the background. I was like, you know, this actually fits better for me. Like, I know the action is still kind of fast, but this is really kind of where the fight scene starts to stop, because there's not a whole lot of the characters fighting after this. Ow. Yeah, I was trying to convey with Raph before when he like stops and he's out of breath. It's like they're getting tired. They're slowing down, and like now they're taking hits pretty bad. And you know, this is kind of, you know, to represent that they're not going to be able to keep this up. Like Zelda's now pinned down. Maria is literally pinned down. And it's like, yeah, Link and Eclipso and, you know, some of the others probably could keep going, but if they did that, and it's like, well, the other characters can't. So yeah, I remember this moment was really cool when I did it. I was like, yeah, Maria needs to show a little bit of her powers in this scene. And people really seem to, like it. They like the fact that, she actually had some of the dark powers as well. Yeah, I struggled for a long time wondering what her actual power should be, if they should be different from Young Link. And I was like, yeah, they should. There should be some difference. So yeah, Girahim has not bled until that moment. Like, Maria is the first to make him bleed. So yeah, I mean, the major fight's over. And I worked on this episode in parts. And so I had to have this transition where the sky, I know it goes fast, but because one of the very first things I worked on was this, like right here. This is a separate part where Medora and Regalo show up. I had always intended to do in Regalo. As much as a lot of people were trying to talk me out of it, they were like, no, you can't kill Regalo. And I was like, he's got to die. Like, sorry. I know, it's like, but why? And it's like, well, you'll see. I mean, it just served a better story purpose for me. So, yeah, a lot of what this does is, it shows that Ganondorf is really, really strong. We already knew Regalo was very powerful. And, it just serves that, this is showing how powerful Ganondorf is, for one thing. And the other thing it shows is that this is the kind of villain he is, where he really does cast aside his son, like, permanently. He shows he shows a little bit of, regret, but not a whole lot. I had a lot of fun making this final shot. I always loved the I was always trying to find new ways to make the Triforce Slash pretty. So there's like the sky is like changing colors in the background. I thought that was neat. I mean, if I did it now, it would probably look a little better than that, but I don't know. That was at the time. Yeah, that was the moment where it's like music stops. It's like he's not hurt, and then bam. That's like, oh man. And yet, he's got to say a few things for the end here. Because I know some people were like, wait a minute, he said his name was Regalo Higurashi. Well, that was his mother's last name, not his father's. He didn't take his father's last name. Well, because if I said his name in episode 6 is Regalo Dragmire, I would have given it away. Yeah, I wanted this to be pretty brutal. I remember one of my friends saw this. They were like, they saw the legs and the arm, and then they severed. He was like, wow! He's like, no! That's a lot of blood. That's probably too much blood. I don't think Regalo had that much blood in him. I Mortal Kombated that. I like to think that the moment coming up right here where he lets go of the sword is where that's the moment where life leaves him. right here. I don't know. I know I didn't make that clear, but okay. So yeah, how do we defeat this guy? Medora's even kind of like, oh man.
Oh, blast it all. Will you now fight me? Will you die like your possessed love?
He's talking about Impa, not. I think somebody was thinking you meant something else by that, but he's talking about Impa. Yeah, I think it says a lot that Medora backs down. I mean, for narrative purposes, I couldn't have Medora just start to fight him, but I was like, it's more of a character thing that Medora's like, no, we're not going to fight him. Like, he has doubts. Like, even Medora defeated young Link, but Medora has doubts whether he can defeat him if Regalo couldn't. Yeah, I'd try to figure out the perfect way to end this. I knew that, you know, if Regalo died, then Zelda the First had to have some kind of appropriate reaction to it. Zelda the First is, throughout the show, has been, you know, not really, you know, hopeful character. And so when I built up the fact that, you know, she and Regalo had a relationship and they've been waiting to see each other after so long, that I was like, you know, if I were her, I'd be like, I'm done. It's like, you know, there's not much left. Because they, you know, she's not going to age. That's just the problem, is that Regalo and Zelda First they're not going to grow up to old age. So they're not going to die of old age. And something has to kill them. Yeah, and this is where I revealed the kind of the twist that, you know, Zelda First was in on it. Zelda First cooperated with Medora to kill Daphnis. And that's where she kind of admits that she was the one that did it. She was the one that, you know, gave them a Triforce and went along with his plan. And she wanted her father dead. And I kind of left it ambiguous as to whether or not Regalo was in on it or Eclipso was in on it either. Like, because in episode 29, you know, they're saying, we don't know what you're talking about. But I like to leave that a mystery as whether or not Regalo or Eclipso were in on it. I know, like, we confirmed Zelda the First was, but, you know, you can make your own assumptions of whether or not, you know, if they knew about this plan, would they go along with it or not? Like, would they want Daphnis to be killed? Like Eclipso did. He was trying to get Link to kill Daphnis in episode 11. Yeah, so, and here comes this is the part where I was like, okay, so what happens to Eclipso now? And I didn't want to kill him off, really, because we'd already kind of gone down that road. So I was like, maybe, you know, he sees the two of them, he goes in the fire, and then you don't see him. That's it. You know, it's like whatever happens to him after that is kind of off screen, except for the beginning of the next episode where you see his clothes and his skin like burn. Because I mean, their story was pretty much over for me. There wasn't much more interesting things I could do with them except for what I did. Yeah, and so this is, you know, it's very Empire Strikes Back, where we lost some people. You know, we're leaving on a sour note here. Like, things are not well. We're not very happy.
Sorry. I didn't mean for this.
Yeah, Midora didn't mean for this because he didn't know. He didn't know. You know, he thought that Ganondorf was dead. He thought Ganondorf had died in the jewel when he threw it into No Man's Land. But Ganondorf got out of the jewel, hit an Impa's body. Yep, and that's where we leave it off, is where I don't think he made it. I don't know. And the next episodes, you know, they talk about Eclipso a lot. They talk about, you know, is he still around? Where is he? We don't know. Whew. Well, that is the episode. It's one of my favorites. I really like I like the action sequences. I like the ending. I like the different, including all the different, you know, Zelda villains. I think it came together pretty well. I mean, I don't know. You know, I mean, I can personally find some flaws here and there, but you know, even if you don't like the animation, like, I don't know. It's like, if you don't like it, I'm kind of like, well, that's okay. I mean, that's up to you, but I don't know. I think it's really good. I really, really liked the episode myself. And thanks for listening to my commentary. I don't know how informative or funny I was, but maybe we'll do another one. Ooh, good soundtrack. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.